You don't rise to the level of your dreams, you fall to the strength of your habits. Most people say they want to change. They want clarity, calm, focus, and control. But every morning they repeat the same patterns: snooze, scroll, delay. They wait for motivation, but motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. What transforms your life is discipline, daily, deliberate, and unshakable. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They didn't chase emotions, they built a structure. They didn't ask, "What do I feel like doing?" They asked, "What needs to be done?" If you've ever felt stuck in a loop of distraction, doubt, or delay, know this: you're not alone, but you are responsible. The truth is harsh but freeing. No one is coming to rescue you. You must become your own rescuer. And that starts today. Not next week, not when it's easy, but now. In this video, we're diving deep into 9 timeless lessons from Stoic philosophy, each one designed to help you rebuild yourself from the inside out. You'll learn how to master your habits, protect your time, control your emotions, and grow stronger through consistent, daily self-discipline. These aren't just ideas. They're tools. And if you use them, life won't just change, it will elevate. So if you're ready to stop waiting and start transforming, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. This is where your new life begins. Let's commit, not someday, but every day. Turn discipline into a daily habit. Most people don't lack ambition, they lack structure. You see it every January, millions of people setting resolutions, chasing massive goals, swearing this year will be different. But within weeks it all fades. Not because they're weak, but because they never built a system to support what they want. They relied on emotion, but emotion doesn't last. Discipline does. Discipline isn't about force. It's not about pushing harder every time you feel tired. It's about removing the option to negotiate with yourself. It's about doing what matters, even when it's the last thing you feel like doing. And that's where the transformation begins. Think of a man waking up at 5 a.m. to walk alone before work. Not because it's trendy, not because someone's watching, but because he made a promise to himself. He's not chasing motivation, he's maintaining momentum, and that's the difference. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is a fire you keep alive, even in the dark. Too many people wait for the right time, the perfect energy, the ideal conditions. But life never offers those consistently. Stoicism rejects that mindset entirely. Epictetus didn't ask if you were in the mood to take action. He demanded that you act because it was right. He believed that freedom comes not from indulgence, but from self-mastery. That's why the Stoic doesn't wait to feel like doing the hard thing. He does it because it aligns with his values. He gets up, writes, trains, thinks, plans, not because it's exciting every day, but because it's essential. In the Stoic view, daily discipline isn't punishment, it's power. The power to build a life on principle, not impulse. One of the biggest mistakes we make is tying our actions to how we feel. I didn't feel like going to the gym. I wasn't in the mood to write. I was too tired to eat right. But feelings are volatile. If you let them run your life, your direction will change with every emotional wave. What builds strength is repetition, not inspiration. You don't train your mind by waiting for motivation. You train it by acting without needing it. That's how you become dependent on yourself. That's how you grow confidence, not by loud affirmations, but by quiet execution. In modern life, it's easier than ever to hide behind distractions. You can scroll for hours, binge opinions, and overthink your goals. But at the end of the day, you either showed up or you didn't. There's no scoreboard for intention, only for action. So the real question is, what do your habits say about who you are becoming? Are you moving toward the life you say you want, or waiting for a better mood to appear and carry you there? The Stoics would tell you this plainly: if you want to feel better, start living better. If you want inner strength, earn it. Every small discipline repeated becomes a wall between you and chaos, a wall that protects your peace, your time, and your focus. You don't need a miracle morning. You don't need to change your life overnight. You need to choose one thing you'll do no matter what. Walk, write, meditate, plan, and do it even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's how identity is built. Not through bursts of effort, but through consistency. Not through perfection, but through persistence. You show up every day, not because you always feel strong, but because doing so makes you stronger. So don't wait for the perfect day. Build the kind of habits that don't ask how you feel. They simply remind you who you are. 2. Choose virtue before temptation arrives. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You must build up your life action by action and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible." That idea isn't just poetic, it's practical. Because the moment of choice is not when temptation stands in front of you. The moment is hours, days, or even years before that. If you don't know who you are before the pressure hits, you'll become whatever the moment demands. Picture yourself at the end of a long, exhausting day. You told yourself this morning you'd skip dessert, you'd avoid gossip at work, and you'd be patient with your kids. But now you're tired, frustrated, and craving a reward. Your discipline fades. You justify. You act on impulse. And afterward you say, "That's not who I want to be." But the truth is, without prior clarity, you never gave yourself a chance to be anyone else. Most people try to make good decisions in the middle of emotional chaos. That's like trying to steer a ship in a storm you never prepared for. Stoicism doesn't wait for the storm. It builds the ship beforehand. When you choose virtue early, when you define your values clearly daily, you remove the need to negotiate with temptation later. You act, not react. The modern world offers you distractions, indulgences, and justifications on a silver platter. Fast food, quick replies, endless scrolling. It whispers, "You deserve this," and hopes you won't pause long enough to question it. But the Stoic pauses in advance. He decides the type of person he wants to be before the moment arrives. And that decision becomes a compass when emotions blur direction. If you wake up in the morning without a principle to guide your day, then when someone disrespects you, you'll fire back. When someone tempts you, you'll fall in. When someone questions you, you'll over-explain. Not because you're weak, but because you're unprepared. Strength is not born in the moment. It's summoned from what was decided before the moment. That's why you must define your non-negotiables before the test comes. What do you refuse to betray, no matter how tired, how tempted, how angry? Is it your self-respect, your honesty, your calm? When you write it down, speak it aloud, rehearse it mentally each day, it hardens into character. And character doesn't break when pressure comes, it holds. Too often, we admire those who remain calm, ethical, and poised under pressure, as if they were born with it. But what we don't see is the hours they spent preparing for that moment. Reading, reflecting, setting boundaries, building habits. Their strength isn't luck. It's layered preparation. If you want to resist temptation, don't wait until it arrives. You decide now. You choose how to speak before you're insulted. You choose what to eat before the menu tempts you. You choose silence before the argument escalates. And in doing that, you protect your mind from chaos and protect your life from regret. So start your day not with vague hopes, but with defined standards. Write down who you are when you're at your best. Speak to yourself like a coach, not a critic. Build your script before life throws you into the scene. When others react wildly, you remain calm. When others chase comfort, you follow clarity. When others regret, you remain grounded, because you prepared. That's how virtue becomes not a reaction, but a habit. Not a restraint, but a power. And the most powerful moment in your life might just be the one you already decided on, long before the pressure ever came. 3. Build mental walls before the storm comes. You don't reinforce the roof during a hurricane. You do it when the sky is clear, when everything feels calm, when there's no pressure to act, yet you act anyway. The same is true for the mind. You don't start strengthening your emotional core in the middle of a breakdown. You train for it beforehand, when the stakes are low but the discipline is high. That's the Stoic approach to inner resilience. Prepare your mind before life gives you a reason to panic. We often underestimate how fragile we are until we're tested. One bad phone call, one betrayal, one shift in circumstances, and we fall apart. Not because we're weak in the moment, but because we never trained for the moment. We never sat down to build a structure that would hold us up when everything else collapses. And so, when stress hits, we don't respond, we react. We spiral, we lash out, or we shut down. The storm doesn't destroy us, our lack of preparation does. But it doesn't have to be this way. The Stoics trained their minds like soldiers trained their bodies. They practiced staying calm under pressure, long before pressure arrived. They imagined loss before it happened. They confronted mortality before illness came. Not to become cold, but to remain clear when the world turned chaotic. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, wasn't pessimism. It was armor. Psychological armor built in peace, worn in war. Picture a Stoic household in ancient Rome. At dawn, the head of the family, perhaps a merchant or a senator, sits alone, journaling by lamplight. He writes not about what went well yesterday, but about what could go wrong today. His ship might be delayed, his clients might lie, his child might fall sick. He doesn't do this to dwell in fear, but to practice calm, to rehearse virtue. So if the misfortune comes, he won't be caught off guard. He won't say, "Why me?" He'll say, "I expected this. Now how do I respond well?" In modern life, we avoid discomfort. We hope bad days don't come. We bury our heads in noise and distraction, but that only leaves us vulnerable. When something shakes us, an insult, a financial loss, a health scare, we crumble, not because of the event, but because we never train the minds to hold steady. The truth is, resilience isn't built during chaos. It's revealed there. What builds it is the quiet repetition of training while the world sleeps. One of the most effective actions is to take 10 minutes each morning to mentally walk through your day, not with fantasy, but with realism. Think about what might go wrong, not to scare yourself, but to prepare. Ask, if someone offends me today, how will I stay calm? If my plans fall apart, how will I adapt without complaint? If I fail, how will I stand back up without self-pity? Write the answers down. Make this your mental rehearsal, not for fear, but for mastery. People often wait for stress to build strength, but Stoicism flips that. It says, build strength so stress doesn't break you. Build so much clarity that confusion doesn't enter. Build such strong emotional walls that anger can knock but never enter the house. Because the moment you feel pain is not the time to learn how to hold it. That training should already be done. This isn't abstract. This is a strategy. And it works. Whether you're preparing for a tough conversation, a job interview, or the unpredictability of life itself, your calm cannot come from circumstance. It must come from design. You build that calm by facing discomfort on your own terms, when you choose to, not when you're forced to. Every time you pause and prepare instead of winging it, you are strengthening the internal walls that hold your peace. And that is not weakness. That is quiet, deliberate power. The kind that doesn't need to scream to be respected. The kind that survives storms because it was built to. 4. Grow little by little. Wisdom takes time. Epictetus wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly. Even the grape requires time to ripen." Yet we live in a culture that glorifies overnight success, instant results, and quick transformations. Scroll through any platform and you'll find stories of people who claim to have changed their lives in 30 days or mastered a new skill in a week. But real growth doesn't work like that. Wisdom is not downloaded, it is built. And the building takes time, repetition, and patience that few are willing to give. Growth doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It shows up in quiet moments. The decision to stay calm when you would have exploded a year ago. The ability to focus longer than you used to. The shift from complaining to taking responsibility. These changes are not sudden, they are subtle, and they are only visible over time, like the slow forming of muscle, the deepening of roots, or the reshaping of a broken bone. Look at anyone truly grounded and wise, and you'll find behind them years of silent work. Early mornings, unread books filled with notes, conversations that humbled them, failures that sharpened their judgment. Take James, a 52-year-old mechanic who rebuilt his life after addiction. He didn't become mentally strong in one breakthrough. He did it by waking up every day at 5 a.m., even when he didn't feel like it. He journaled, read Stoic texts, trained his body, and faced each day one clean step at a time. Now he leads a group helping other men do the same. His strength wasn't discovered, it was constructed. The mistake most people make is assuming growth has to be dramatic, that if you're not making massive strides every week, you're falling behind. But the Stoics remind us that progress is not always visible. Marcus Aurelius didn't become emperor and philosopher in a moment of inspiration. He became who he was by writing down his thoughts daily, confronting his flaws, and trying, imperfectly, to live by reason. There is no shortcut to that kind of strength. It is layered, not launched. Real wisdom isn't about knowing more facts. It's about becoming someone who acts with clarity, even in confusion. That takes time. And more importantly, it takes consistency. Not perfection, just consistency. Reading a few lines of Seneca each morning, practicing one moment of patience during traffic, choosing not to argue when you feel disrespected. These are the building blocks of a resilient life. They don't impress people on the outside, but they transform the person on the inside. The problem is that we are trained to chase results, not to value the process. We abandon habits if they don't produce instant validation. We say meditation doesn't work because we still feel distracted. We give up on reading because we don't remember every word. But that mindset misses the entire point. You're not doing these things to perform. You're doing them to strengthen. And that strengthening happens little by little, beneath the surface, until one day you realize you've changed. Stoicism asks us to commit to a way of life, not a burst of effort. It teaches that every small choice matters. That time used well refines character, but only if you show up daily, even when it's boring, even when it feels pointless. Because it's not pointless, it's progress that hasn't revealed itself yet. So choose the long game. Set one daily practice that makes you slightly better. 5 minutes of silence, 1 page of reflection, a short walk to clear your thoughts. Stay with it, not to impress anyone, not to fix everything overnight, but to slowly, steadily build the kind of mind that doesn't shake under pressure. That's not glamorous, but it's real, and it's yours, if you're willing to grow the slow way. If you've made it this far, that already says something rare about you. In a world obsessed with shortcuts and dopamine, you've chosen to sit with something deeper. You've chosen to listen, reflect, and stay present with ideas that don't promise instant reward, but lasting strength. That is uncommon, that is powerful, and that's exactly why this path is for you. Because wisdom isn't a destination, it's a discipline. It's built moment by moment, exactly like this. So stay with it. The further we go, the clearer it becomes. Not easier, but clearer. Let's keep walking. The road gets quieter, but also more real. 5. You don't need perfection, just consistency. You've probably had days when you were on track. You woke up early, stuck to your plans, maybe even carved out time to journal or read. Then came a rough day. You skipped one task. You lost focus. You gave in to distraction. And in that moment, a familiar thought slipped in. I've failed. I broke the streak. What's the point now? That's the trap of perfection. The belief that if you're not doing everything perfectly, you're not doing it at all. But that mindset doesn't build strength, it destroys it. Perfection is a fantasy. It looks good on paper, but in real life, it folds under pressure. Life is unpredictable. Your schedule will get interrupted. Your energy will fluctuate. People will demand your time. Some days you'll be sharp, others you'll be tired, stressed, maybe even discouraged. That's not failure. That's life. And the people who grow, really grow, aren't the ones who do everything flawlessly. They're the ones who keep showing up anyway. You don't need to meditate for 30 minutes every day to become more mindful. You need to come back to your breath, especially on the days your mind is scattered. You don't need to eat clean every single meal to be healthy. You need to choose better the next time you feel tempted. You don't need to never get angry to be emotionally strong. You need to recognize the flare-up and pause before it owns you. Progress is not about uninterrupted streaks. It's about not letting a single misstep become an excuse to stop walking. Let's get practical. Imagine this scenario. You set a goal to walk every morning for 30 minutes. You do it for 5 days. Then Saturday comes and it rains. You skip it. On Sunday, you sleep in. Now your brain says you broke the habit. So Monday, you don't even try. But what if you reframed that? What if you saw that break not as failure, but as part of the process? What if Monday became the day you picked it back up? Not because you were perfect, but because you're committed. That's where resilience begins. In that exact moment, when it's easier to quit, but you return anyway. The Stoics would reject the idea that a perfect record is the goal. Marcus Aurelius admitted his own failings in his journal. He wrote to remind himself, not to punish himself. Progress for a Stoic is not linear, it's circular. You return to the practice every day. You fall short and then you come back, not weaker, but wiser. That's how you build quiet strength. So stop aiming for streaks that crumble the first time life gets hard. Instead, aim for identity. Who are you when things don't go as planned? Who are you after the third bad day in a row? That's the version of you that matters. Because when motivation fades, when conditions aren't ideal, when things feel off, that's when discipline is tested. That's when consistency earns its name. You might think small steps don't matter, but they do, especially on the days you want to give up. Doing just 10 minutes of focused work, one healthy meal, one mindful pause, these are not bare minimums. These are moments where you protect your momentum, you stop the slide. You remind your mind, I still show up, even now. Perfection is brittle, it shatters, but consistency is flexible. It bends and adjusts, but it holds. That's the mindset that lasts, not the one that demands everything, the one that accepts today's effort without letting yesterday's slip become a reason to disappear. So don't aim to be flawless, aim to be faithful. Faithful to your process, to your intention, to the quiet, honest work of building something real. Perfection is a trap, but consistency, that's where real transformation lives. Start again and again. That's what makes you strong. 6. Time is your greatest asset. You've lost time this week. Maybe it was 10 minutes scrolling through things you won't remember. Maybe it was 2 hours replaying a conversation that didn't deserve a second thought. Or maybe it was entire days spent busy, yet somehow you still felt empty when you lay down at night. This isn't guilt, it's awareness. And awareness is the first step toward reclaiming the most valuable thing you own, your time. Time isn't just a resource, it's your life measured in moments. You can earn back money, you can rebuild relationships, but once an hour passes, it doesn't return. Still, most people treat time like it's disposable. They fill it with noise, distractions, pointless arguments, and shallow obligations. Not because they want to waste it, but because they've never been taught to value it the way the Stoics did. Seneca warned that it's not death we should fear, but the habit of squandering life. The man working a meaningless job and numbing himself at night isn't lazy. He's disconnected from time. The woman staying busy just to avoid silence isn't productive. She's running from stillness. And this matters because a person who doesn't protect their time can't protect their energy, their growth, or their peace. You might believe you're too busy to change, that you'll start reading more, thinking deeper, or living slower once life calms down. But that moment never comes. You don't make time. You take it from what no longer serves you, from habits that keep you stuck, from routines that numb your mind. Change begins when you stop saying, I'll find the time, and start saying, this matters enough to protect. The Stoics didn't believe in time management apps or productivity hacks. They believed in presence, in doing what matters now before it becomes a regret later. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning, to remind himself what to do with the day ahead. That's why Epictetus instructed his students to end the day by reviewing how they spent it. Not to be perfect, to be precise. Start simple. Track one day. Where did your time go? How much of it was intentional? How much was automatic? Then ask yourself, was any of it aligned with the person you want to become? If not, you're not too busy, you're just not clear. Clarity brings urgency, and urgency is what transforms routine into meaning. In your life, you might already feel the pressure of passing time. You might sense that you've waited too long to start, that it's too late to change careers, rewire habits, or shift direction. That's a lie dressed as logic. The truth is, you still have time, but only if you stop wasting it. Only if you stop feeding what drains you and start building what defines you. You don't need a perfect schedule. You need boundaries. You need to say no more often. Not out of selfishness, but out of respect for what truly matters. You need a reset every morning. Not a miracle, just a moment. A moment to ask, what will I give this hour to? And a moment at night to ask, did I spend my time like it mattered? Because it does. It always has. The clock isn't your enemy. Distraction is, delay is, disconnection is. When you protect your time, you protect your mind. You stop reacting, you start choosing. And in a world trying to hijack your attention, that is power. So set a timer, not for your to-do list, but for your life. Mark what matters. Cut what doesn't. Time doesn't need to slow down. You just need to stop giving it away without thinking. Because once you do, everything sharpens. Your focus, your energy, your path. And that's where transformation begins. Not in doing more, but in reclaiming what's already slipping through your hands. 7. Discipline is the highest form of freedom. It's easy to mistake freedom for comfort, for doing what you want, when you want, without limits. That kind of freedom sounds nice until it traps you. Until your health declines, your focus evaporates, and your days start blending into each other without meaning. Then you realize, freedom without direction is just drift. And nothing drifts upward. Real freedom, the kind that sustains a strong life, is forged through discipline. Not punishment, not rigidity, but the quiet ability to choose what matters, especially when it's hardest to do so. There's a man I once met in Colorado, retired now, who spent 20 years working in high-risk security detail overseas. His days were built on strict schedules, hard training, and precise execution. When he returned to civilian life, everyone thought he'd finally be free. No more orders, no more routine. But within 6 months, he was restless, anxious, spiraling. He told me the truth most people don't want to admit. I wasn't free when I had no discipline. I was drowning in choices with no clarity. So he rebuilt his day, waking at 5, training, journaling, meditating, not because someone told him to, because he had learned that structure gave him strength. That freedom isn't about escaping rules, it's about building the right ones. We grow up thinking that discipline is a limitation. It removes joy, spontaneity, and pleasure. But when you look closer, you'll see that the people with the most peace, the clearest minds, the deepest energy, are those who control their actions. They don't let cravings, distractions, or mood swings decide their day. And that's not suffocation, that's power. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology caught up. Epictetus taught that a man ruled by desires isn't free. He's a slave to whatever triggers him. Whether it's a scroll, a sugar hit, or a sarcastic comment. If you can be pulled off course easily, then you're not in charge. And if you're not in charge, you're not free. The hard truth is, self-control is the only real control you have in this life. The world will always push. Your job is not to move unless it's on your terms. A common mistake is to see discipline as harsh, almost militaristic. But Stoic discipline isn't about forcing yourself to live coldly. It's about creating inner space, the kind of space where thought comes before reaction, where habits support you instead of sabotaging you, where you can move through life on your feet, not on your knees begging for comfort. Let's say you want to break a habit, late-night snacking, reacting angrily, skipping workouts. You don't do it by willing yourself once. You do it by building a routine so strong that the decision is made before the temptation appears. You eat your last meal at 6, you turn off your screens by 9. You journal when you feel triggered. You lay out your shoes before bed. These small rituals aren't about being strict, they're about removing friction. They're about saying, I respect my energy too much to waste it on indecision. Discipline gives you something most people never find: trust in yourself. When you follow through with your commitments, even when no one's watching, you begin to believe in yourself. You stop needing external validation, applause, or shortcuts. You become the kind of person who can weather discomfort with grace because you've trained for it. And that's the kind of inner strength that no one can take from you. So the next time you feel tempted to skip the hard thing, ask yourself, what would my life look like if I did what I said I would every single day? Not perfectly, just relentlessly. Over time, that builds a quiet, unshakable kind of freedom. The kind that doesn't need noise, doesn't need approval, and doesn't need to shout. It just walks forward, clear, steady, and untouchable. 8. Silence at the right moment is real strength. You've likely been in a situation where your chest tightened, your jaw clenched, and you felt the urge to say something, anything, to defend yourself, to fight back, to prove a point. Maybe it was during a tense conversation with someone you love, or a moment of disrespect at work. You had the words ready, you were justified. But what came next? Did speaking ease the weight, or did it escalate the noise? In that instant, silence would have felt like weakness. But in truth, it would have been control. We're conditioned to believe that to stay silent is to lose, that silence is passive, it's giving up power. But silence, when chosen with clarity, is not weakness, it's strategy, it's restraint, it's presence. Most people speak from emotion, not principle. They let their feelings lead, and only later ask themselves if it was worth it. But by then, the damage is already done. In a world where everyone wants to react fast and loud, choosing not to speak can be the boldest move you make. Think back to the last argument you had that drained you. Now imagine if you had paused, breathed, and said nothing, not because you were afraid, but because you refused to add fuel to a fire that didn't deserve your energy. That's a strength. That's the kind of emotional discipline Stoicism has taught for centuries. Marcus Aurelius didn't stay silent out of fear. He stayed silent because he saw through the noise. He understood that reacting to provocation only proves that you've been provoked. In everyday life, silence isn't just about holding your tongue. It's about holding your ground. It's choosing not to respond to a rude comment in a meeting. It's not replying to a message that was meant to bait you. It's walking away when someone wants a reaction more than a resolution. That kind of silence isn't passive. It's powerful. Because it means your peace is not up for grabs. Your time, your attention, your emotional state, those are things you guard, not give away. The mistake many people make is believing that saying something gives them back control. But words spoken in anger rarely solve anything. They often deepen wounds, make enemies, create consequences that linger long after the moment has passed. The Stoics would argue that true control is internal. If someone can pull a reaction out of you at will, you're not in control. They are. And that's not power, that's dependency dressed in pride. Now, picture yourself in your next challenging conversation. Your heart starts to race. You feel misunderstood, maybe even attacked. That's your cue, not to strike, but to anchor. Slow your breathing. Return to your intention. Remind yourself, not everything deserves a response. Not every confrontation needs to be won. Sometimes, the only victory is walking away with your self-respect intact. This doesn't mean silence in every moment. It means silence in the right ones, the ones where speaking would be ego, not clarity, where words would be a reaction, not wisdom. You don't have to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to justify your peace to those who thrive on chaos. Your silence is your boundary, your signal that you are not available for unnecessary conflict. In practice, this means rehearsing calm before chaos arrives. When you're calm, train your nervous system. Visualize how you'll respond when triggered. Write it down. Say it aloud. Practice the pause. Because when the moment comes, and it always does, you won't be improvising. You'll be choosing. Not from fear, but from strength. You don't need to win every argument. You need to win yourself back from the need to always speak. And when you do, you'll notice something quiet but undeniable. Fewer regrets, less exhaustion, more clarity. In that space, wisdom grows. Not from shouting, but from stillness. From silence that comes not from submission, but from mastery. 9. Change your perspective. Change your life. Epictetus once said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And yet, we live most of our lives convinced that the world is the problem. Other people, bad luck, missed chances. We carry frustration, regret, and resentment, not because life has been unfair, but because we've looked at it through a lens that distorts the truth. That lens is our perspective. Change it, and everything else begins to shift, even when nothing outside actually changes. Think about a moment in your own life that didn't go the way you wanted. Maybe you applied for a promotion and didn't get it. Maybe someone let you down. Maybe you worked hard for something, only to watch it fall apart. Naturally, you felt discouraged, angry, maybe even hopeless. That reaction isn't a flaw, it's human. But what happens next depends on the perspective you choose. You can decide that life is against you, or you can ask what this moment is revealing about your expectations, your mindset, your path. The most common mistake is assuming that pain always means punishment, that if something hurts, it's bad. But sometimes pain is information. Sometimes it's showing you what needs to be let go, what needs to be built stronger, what part of your thinking has been rigid, fragile, or based on illusion. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew we don't control events, we control how we interpret them. And that power of interpretation, that's what changes lives. Let's get practical. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. Your first instinct might be to curse the delay, blame other drivers, feel your heart race, and your blood pressure rise. But you're not actually upset because of the traffic. You're upset because you expected smooth roads. You expected the world to align with your timeline. When it didn't, your peace disappeared. Not because it was stolen, but because it was conditional. That's what Stoicism attacks at the root, our habit of tying emotional control to external events. Instead, imagine this. You're still in traffic, but this time you pause. You breathe. You accept that you're not in control of the road, but you are in control of your response. You use the time to rehearse your opening points. You remind yourself that one late arrival doesn't define your value, and you walk into that meeting calmer, clearer, and more grounded. The traffic didn't change, but you did. That's the power of shifting perspective. Not to deny difficulty, but to reclaim your strength within it. The Stoics weren't detached from the world. They were deeply engaged, but they engaged from the inside out. They practiced the art of interpretation, learning to see frustration as a teacher, loss as a test of grace, and failure as a forge for better judgment. And they did it by training the mind to pause before reacting, to observe instead of assume, and to choose thoughts that created clarity, not chaos. Your life is shaped by how you see, and how you see is shaped by what you've trained your mind to look for. So if you keep finding reasons to feel behind, unappreciated, or stuck, it's not necessarily the world. It might be your filter. That doesn't mean your pain isn't real. It means your power to shift it is closer than you think. Start by catching yourself the next time you say, "This always happens to me," or "I can't handle this." Stop and ask, what else could this mean? What else could I learn? That moment of pause is where transformation begins. Not through force, but through awareness. Through choosing a response instead of reacting from habit. Change your perspective, and you don't just change your mood. You change your behavior. You make better decisions. You stop wasting energy on what's out of reach and start building the kind of life that holds its shape, even under pressure. You see clearly. You act calmly. You live better. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. And that's more than powerful. That's freedom. What you've just heard is not simply philosophy. It's a framework, a way of living with clarity, purpose, and strength. These 9 Stoic principles are not meant to inspire you for a few minutes and then fade. They are meant to be practiced day by day in the quiet moments of your ordinary life. That is where transformation happens. Not in grand declarations, but in the way you think, speak, and act when no one is watching. Discipline becomes your structure. Virtue becomes your compass. Silence becomes your power. You begin to see that freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, but in mastering what you choose. And slowly you build a life that is steady, not reactive, focused, not scattered, intentional, not accidental. So take these lessons and make them yours. Choose one to begin. Maybe it's protecting your time. Maybe it's learning to pause before you react. Maybe it's the daily act of writing down who you want to become and living just one action in alignment with that. Whatever you choose, commit to it, not for a week, but as a practice. Consistency over perfection. That's how the Stoics train their minds, and it's how you train yours. You don't need to change everything today. You only need to begin. Small, deliberate, and unwavering steps. And each day, return to work, because the work is never finished, but it is always worth it. If something in this journey resonated with you, I invite you to share it below. Share your challenge, your shift, your first step, because your story may be the exact reminder someone else needs to stay committed to theirs. And that, too, is part of the Stoic way. Strength, not just for yourself, but for the world around you.